All right, gang, Coach Chris here. I'm at the Montrose Wilson running track where we do our Thursday morning track workouts for T2. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the running form drills that we focus on here. So we usually do these track intervals, not to be necessarily faster, although that's usually what ends up happening. You do get faster by running faster. But the main goal is to help you run more efficiently and avoid injury. The running track is a softer surface, so it's good to do a little bit of experimenting with your technique and your form, but also to do higher intensity intervals. So 4 major things that we like to focus on, really 5. The first thing is just your posture. So one of the tips that we like to do is we call it the T2, the reset drill, as we cheer on our fellow runners on the lakefront path. And that's thinking about your upper body posture. You want to make sure that you're not hunching forward, and you want to make sure you're not leaning too far back. So what we do is when we see another runner on the trail, we raise our arms up and go, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, T2." And when you raise your arms up, you're raising your torso, your upper body, up a little bit higher, and that helps to reset your posture. And if you raise your arms up, and then keeping that posture in place, just drop your arms. You'll run with your chest up and forward, which is a nice, we call forward lean position, where you can maintain your center mass over the front of your feet, so you're moving a little bit more efficiently. So every mile on your long runs, do a little stretch, or if you see somebody you know, go, "Hey, how's it going?" Raise those arms up, and then just drop the arms while keeping the torso and the posture upright. And that way you're resetting your posture. One other tip with posture I like to give is with your upper body, we don't want to see your shoulders swinging back and forth too much. If the shoulders are swinging too much, the hips are usually swinging too much, and that can cause your stride to essentially pronate, supinate, have different issues with your impact landing of your feet. So you don't want to start something at the shoulders that ends up, going all the way down to your feet. So what I like to do is a little mantra in your head to have, a little saying, a little phrase, hips to nips. You want your hand moving from right in front of your nipple to right alongside your hip to make sure that your elbows are driving back properly. A lot of people, we don't normally stand or do anything in this type of position with our arms back, so our bodies are not used to this. So we do need to work on stretching back here a little bit. And if you're not used to having your arms swing back a little bit more aggressively, what happens as your arm swings back, your shoulders will begin to rotate. Because as you swing, if you don't have that range of motion, the only option to control that momentum is to swing your shoulders. And we don't want to see excessive shoulder movement. What that does is causes your arms to cross over your front, your hips to rotate, and that reciprocates all the way down to your feet. So think about your hand simply moving without crossing over the center line of your body, your hand moving from right in front of your nipple to right alongside your hip. Hips to nips, hips to nips. That'll get you to drive your elbow back as you're running. And if you drive that elbow back more, that gets your upper body and your hips pushing more forward, and again reinforces that slight forward lean position that we want to be in. So 2 quick things for the posture: reset drill and hips to nips. Another major thing is your cadence. I know these days a lot of people have a smartwatch, a device that tracks your cadence, how many steps per minute you're taking. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And ideally, to avoid injury, you want to be over at least 80 steps per minute per leg, or 160 beats total. Ideally, though, a little bit higher. As you run faster, especially, you might hit 180 steps per minute combined, so it's 90 steps per leg, which is kind of like a spinning cycling cadence that people might be familiar with. That is a good kind of natural optimal cadence. If you think about 180 beats in 60 seconds, so per minute, that's 3 steps every second. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's a cadence you might not be used to. If you haven't done a lot of running, or if you've never worked on your running technique, you want to make sure that you keep that cadence nice and high. So look at that average cadence, especially in the long runs. If that average cadence is dropping below 180 beats total, or 80 steps per leg, the injury risk is higher because you're taking bigger, loftier strides and you're hitting the ground with higher impact. If I'm moving at the same speed, at a low cadence, I'm moving up and down a lot. At a high cadence, I'm taking short, quick steps. And so my vertical oscillation, the amount I bounce up and down, is less. And by taking shorter, quicker steps, by having a higher cadence, by swinging the arms a little quicker, I can actually run much more efficiently. So when you're out there running and you want to increase your cadence, how do you do it? I call this my Jedi mind trick. And that's basically realizing that your arms are swinging when you run because your body is trying to balance itself out. So if the right foot goes forward, naturally your body wants to swing the left arm forward to compensate for that. Otherwise, if I only had my right foot on the ground, I would lean and fall to the left. That's why your arm swings. It's hard to run without swinging your arms. You can try it, but it is tough. So what you can do as a runner is, the Jedi mind trick is to just tell your feet to move faster by controlling it with your arms first. If the arms start pumping a little quicker, shorter, and faster, it will throw your balance off and your feet will try to follow that without even thinking about it. So you're tricking your feet by pumping your arms a little quicker. If you're a runner, if you've ever been at an event where you get fatigued, you're at an aid station, you grab some water, and then you want to start running again, just starting by swinging your arms is a lot easier than moving your legs when they're heavy. So if you pump your arms a little quicker, even at a walking pace, you'll get yourself running again. And you can learn how to run and even walk more efficiently by just upping the cadence. So use that Jedi mind trick for your cadence. All right, so tip number one, posture. Tip number two, cadence. Tip number three is going to be your midfoot strike. So when we sprint, yes, we want to be up on our toes. We're pushing off quicker. We're trying to get our feet moving quicker. Problem is, if you're running up on your toes, your calf is firing as your body weight is absorbed, and again, as your body weight is being pushed forward every single step. That overworks your calf. And if you're doing a marathon, you do not want to be running with your calf as your primary propulsive force. You want to save those calf muscles. Those are the ones that are smaller and they will cramp up, especially as they get more glycogen depleted. You do the math, the average human has around 1,500, 2,000 calories. You're burning stored in muscle glycogen, so sugar in your body, and you burn about 100 calories a mile. So if you're running at close to threshold, the average, if you do the average body weight, average body size, average glycogen, all that, the average runner will run out of glycogen at mile 18.5. And the first muscle group to usually go, sometimes even before that point, is your calf. That's why people get calf cramps oftentimes when they're running a marathon, right around that 20-mile point. Yeah, maybe they drank some Gatorade, they got a little more sugar in, or they paced a little slower, so they prolonged that cramping. But it happens oftentimes because the calf is not just underfueled, but because it's overworked. And so you don't want to be up on the balls of your foot. Yes, you can absorb more impact, but you're overworking the muscle if you're up on the balls of your feet. If you're walking, it's more efficient to actually heel strike. So that's the other end of the spectrum, right? You can be on the balls of your foot or your forefoot or your toes. If you're sprinting, you can be on your heel if you're walking. But if you're running for endurance and you want to be efficient, we don't want to be on the heels, because if you think about, if I land on my heel and I lift my other leg up, my body's actually going to lean backwards and fall backwards. So gravity's pushing me back. It's kind of like applying the brakes if you're heel striking. So we don't want to be forefoot striking on the balls of our foot, overworking our calf, and we don't want to be heel striking because that's applying the brake every step. So we want to do a midfoot strike or a whole foot strike. So midfoot just means your whole foot, if you ever hear that phrase. Think of like if you look at your foot, the big toe, the big toe, the small toe, the ball of your foot. So the forefoot area is 2 contact points, typically 2 hot spots for every foot impact, and the heel. So you really actually have 3 contact points primarily, and you want all 3 of those contact points to hit the ground as close together as possible so that you're not overworking your calf and you're not applying the brakes. So like a tripod being stable with 3 contact points, you want to have the same thing with every foot strike. So you can even like jog in place and do what we call the freeze drill. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, jog in place, and then freeze and see, is that foot stable? If you find yourself, leaning to the left or leaning inwards, it might be a sign that you're landing on the outside or inside of your foot. And if you can increase the time it takes for your whole foot to strike the ground, so get to that stable platform quicker with every step, you can basically make sure that you're distributing that impact force across your whole foot. So less impact, more stability. So that's why we say look for a midfoot strike. And it really doesn't matter if, yes, maybe your heel does strike first or your forefoot strikes first, as long as your whole foot touches the ground as close to, in terms of timing, as close together as possible every step. You want to feel stable every step. That's what the midfoot strike is about. We do a drill that actually, I call it now the Dave Scott drill. So if you know Dave Scott, multiple time Ironman world champion, most fit athlete in the world back in the 80s. I did a clinic with him one time in Colorado, and he had us running in place and doing our typical run, and then intentionally going up on your forefoot for several steps, and then intentionally going on your heel for several steps, and then going to your midfoot strike. So as you're actively running, even at the same speed, you can go on your forefoot, then go on your heel, which doesn't feel comfortable at all, and then midfoot, and just feel the difference between all the extremes. Go on your forefoot where your calf is working more, go on your heel where the impact force hurts a little bit and slows you down, and then do midfoot strike where you're much more efficient. And as you do that change in feeling, you can make sure and auto-correct yourself and build that proprioception so every foot strike is efficient. So try that Dave Scott drill, I like to call it now. So shout out to Dave Scott for that one. All right, so we did posture, we did cadence, we did midfoot strike. Last piece is the forward lean, and that's making sure that when you start running, everybody naturally leans forward to take that first couple steps, but we need to actually have that forward lean be maintained if we want to take advantage of gravity propelling us forward, right? We lean forward because we've learned that gravity makes us fall. And so we want to feel like when we're running for efficiency that we are always running in a controlled free fall. We have a very slight forward lean, so gravity is pulling us forward and we don't have to work as hard every step. And this is kind of the real hack to free speed, when you start to realize that by leaning forward, and by leaning forward, we don't mean from the hips, we mean from, we don't mean from the shoulders. We don't want to lean forward with the shoulders bending at the hip. We want to think about center of mass. So from your hips all the way up to your shoulders as one unit, one center of mass, that needs to always be just slightly over the midpoint of your foot. And it can even be just, half an inch. It doesn't need to be a lot. As long as you have a slight forward lean while you're running and you maintain that, you will run very efficiently. What we don't want to see is you start leaning forward and then you start leaning back as you run, and now all of a sudden you lose that free momentum, that free gravity effect. So what you can do, I call it a Segway drill. You jog in place, you lean forward, and you lean forward more and you move faster. Likewise, if you just jog in place with the same cadence and you lean backwards, you can move backwards. So same cadence, leaning forwards, leaning backwards. And just by doing that, you can get a feel for where your center of mass is relative to your foot strike and control the speed. It's like a throttle. If you've ever been on a Segway where you lean forward, you go faster, you lean backwards, you go backwards, you can play with that as you're running. And that's a way to learn how to maintain free speed. And if you put all those things together, right? Good posture, good cadence, good midfoot strike, good forward lean. Think of all those little things. Don't try to do them all at once. It'll definitely overwhelm you to try to do all 4 things at the same time. Just pick one thing to focus on each time you go out for a run. Don't try to do too much at once. But put that into your toolkit, into your running belt, if you will. And every time you hit a mile marker, think, oh yeah, what is that other running form tip? And that'll give you something to help you stay focused also distract you if you're out on a really long run. Those are the four main things. There's a lot of good running form tips out there, different brands, good form running, natural running, Newton natural running, the pose method. All of those different running techniques essentially hit on all those same areas. They might communicate it and have you do different drills, but they all generally teach the same major running form concepts. Now, the one additional thing I like to throw in is more about your metabolism and running efficiently, and that's your breathing. So all these biomechanical things are sometimes great to focus on, but if you don't have your breathing dialed in, you're missing kind of that final piece that really makes you an efficient runner. So let's talk about asymmetric breathing. This is my big final tip, my fifth tip, if you will. So when we run, oftentimes we don't realize this, but we're always breathing in a ratio to our foot strikes. So as I run easy, as I'm running, I might take 4 steps as I breathe out and 3 steps as I breathe in. If I can keep that breathing rate going, that is super efficient. That's usually, I can keep my heart rate maybe in a zone 2 or at most a zone 3 effort level, which would be zone 3 in terms of heart rate is typically what we call the endurance zone. It's where you can build endurance and be very efficient. You can probably go for 8 hours or more in zone 3. That is a very efficient place to run. You want to do most of your long runs in those lower zones. You don't want to be doing every long run at race pace. That's a recipe for injury. So I like to encourage the idea of a negative split to your long runs, and that can be accomplished by having that low breathing rate early on, and that it gives you that little budget to use later in the run. Metabolically, what it does is it lets you to work more on using fat as a fuel source. You can oxidize your fat stores into more energy, and that is the untapped free tank of gas that your body has. Right? The human body stores roughly 1,500 to 2,000 calories in glycogen. I like to do a body weight conversion. If you're a 150-pound athlete, you have about 1,500, it's about 10 times that, 1,500 calories of sugar, of glycogen stored in your body, in your muscle, in your blood, your liver. That's your fuel that you can use. So if you're running and you burn about 100 calories a mile and you only have 1,500 calories, guess what? You can only do 15 miles. Yeah, you might take gels in and you might be able to prolong that. But then how do you really get to 26.2? And the key is running easier. Don't run at that anaerobic or almost anaerobic state where you're burning only sugar. If you run at a lower intensity, especially like zone 3, zone 2, you're breathing in more oxygen than your muscles are demanding. And so your body can take that oxygen and it can metabolize fat stores as a fuel source. Burning fat is like, I call my campfire analogy. If you throw fat in the fire, it doesn't actually burn right away. You have to fan the flame, put more oxygen into the fire. That's how fat burns. You have to oxidize it. You have to get more oxygen into your body to get that free energy out of your fat stores. And that really can only be accomplished when your breathing rate is very low and controlled. So an asymmetric breathing rate, like I mentioned, is when you do about 4 steps breathing out, 3 steps in. You think of your total exhale, total inhale, 4 plus 3 is 7. That's an odd number. So if you're breathing at that rate, what ends up happening, you take 4 steps as you're breathing out, 3 steps as you're breathing in, 4 steps as you're breathing out. You're always going to do your exhale on a different side of your body because the total respiratory cycle, if you will, ends up being an odd number. So one cycle, you'll exhale on the left. Next cycle, you'll exhale on the right. And you'll be able to make your running stride more symmetrical. A lot of people run with a heavier step on one side of their body because they're always breathing with a symmetrical breathing rate. So by doing an asymmetrical breathing rate, you can keep your biomechanics more symmetrical. So long runs, try to do a 4-3. If you're doing a tempo run, harder run, do a 3-2. On race day, you might do a 3-2 the whole way, But for a marathon, especially if you're doing the longer distance events, I always say do a 4-3 breathing rate for the first half of your run and a 3-2 on the second half. When I run a marathon like Chicago, as soon as I see the 13.1 sign, I actually try to keep my breathing rate at 4-3 all the way up to that point. Once I hit 13.1, then I allow myself to go up to a 3-2 breathing rate. If I'm having a good day. If I'm having a bad day, then maybe I'll wait a little bit longer before I shift that gear. But that's a great way, without even looking at your heart rate, to gauge what zone you're in terms of heart rate zone, but also to really focus on your breathing. And if you focus on your breathing, you might actually think about getting more oxygen in. And if you get more oxygen into the fire, you're gonna burn more fat as a fuel source. So hack your body, right? It's a little bit of a biohack by focusing on breathing in more and try to do that 4-3 breathing rate. If you do find yourself at a higher intensity, like zone 5 running, like that would be like a 5K pace, maybe up to a 10K, you might be running at a 2-2 breathing rate. In 2, out 2, in 2, out 2. That's a pretty high intensity. So if you're running, or if you're running in a group and you're running next to somebody and you hear somebody running at a 2-2 breathing rate, they might be going a little faster than they should. So as you're doing your first couple weeks of training and you're learning your paces, trying to figure out, am I running at the right pace? Use this breathing rate hack as a way to gauge if you're running at the right intensity. When I run up alongside some of my runners, I'm always listening to your breathing. And that's how I can know what heart rate zone you're in without even seeing your heart rate data. I use it strategically in races too. If I'm running next to somebody I want to beat, I try to control my breathing more than theirs. That way I know I always have that extra gear later on that I can shift into. So you can use this breathing hack in a whole bunch of different ways. And to simplify it again, 4-3 breathing rate is 4 steps breathing out, 3 steps breathing in. That's a kind of a natural, easy breathing rhythm. That would be your zone 3 pace. If you're breathing 3-2, so out 3 steps, in 2 steps, that is a zone 4 effort level, a racing tempo threshold type of zone. And then a 2-2 breathing rate, into, out 2, into, out 2. That is basically a zone 5. You're pushing yourself into the red zone at that. So play around with all of this, right? You've got the running form tips, you've got the breathing tips, all these different tips you can put into your toolkit. Each run, just pick one thing to focus on and try to put it to use. If it works for you, I'd love to hear it. Send me some feedback, maybe post in our chat groups and whatnot, or on this video. Let me know, what breathing rate do you use in your training? And you hopefully are using all of it, especially when you're doing interval training, different intensities, should use different breathing rates. But especially in the long run, that's where it becomes more important. So focus on your breathing on the long run, see what you end up doing as your respiratory rate, or ideally that asymmetric breathing rate. And see how it goes. Good luck out there, gang.